should be seeing the Evergreen homepage, right?
Yes.
Okay, so if you come up here to the navigation bar at the top, you don't even have to be logged in to see this, but you click blog. And then, so I've already made this one into a blog post. So we usually do a slideshow, like a PowerPoint slideshow, but I've already made this one into a blog post. So we're gonna come here and click on Date Ball Energy Bites. So if you're interested in the recipe, you can come and find it right here. So these are what we're making. And so what is a date ball or energy bite? They're basically a dessert, but they are less bad for you. They're sort of a healthy alternative, not like the most healthy you could do, because we still want them to be good. But using almonds and dates, you can blend them or use a food processor to blend them, and they create a dough when they come together, because you have the powdery almonds and the dates, which act like a glue to hold it all together. So when you mix the almonds and the dates blended together, it's sort of a neutral flavor base. It's sweet, but it doesn't lean any particular direction as far as flavor. So there are lots of different options you can use. Like you can do a cranberry orange, you could do a lemon ginger, you can do a coconut chocolate. I've made all of these and they're really, really good. And so the one that I chose to make for this is probably the most delicious. It definitely eats more like a dessert than a breakfasty thing, and that's all right with me. So I chose to do an espresso chocolate cherry flavored energy bite. So here's the ingredients. You've got 1 cup of almonds. Have them be raw and unsalted. Important to have them unsalted. 2/3 cup of dried cherries. That's this one in the picture, if you all can see. These are sold at Costco, and they are very similar to the Cherry Republic dried cherries, which Billy and Lanny have told us about before, which are wonderful, of course. So use those cherries if you can. I also get the dates from Costco, and as you were just saying, they're not the wonderful succulent juicy ones from Israel and Jordan, but they are Costco's best. They're what they can do, and it really helps to have them already pitted. Otherwise you'll just spend your whole day pitting dates, and nobody really wants to do that. So go in and get the pitted dates, and they sell them in these huge containers from Costco, and you'll make many batches of date balls out of a container like that, because Costco, everything's huge. So then you use instant coffee or some very, very, very concentrated coffee. I use just a tiny bit of water and mix it with a big heaping spoonful of your instant coffee mix. And I use decaf. I'm an unleaded kind of gal. And I've found that you can just use this little teaspoon of water to mix in a very concentrated, it almost becomes like a syrup, and you'll use that to flavor your mix without adding too much moisture. So that's the reasoning on that. So you get your dates. Almond extract is always a really nice thing to just punch up the flavor. I love almond extract, and I'll put it in anything. But you could use vanilla if you weren't as fond of that almond flavor. A little bit of sea salt, and then of course chocolate chips, because we want it to be good. And you can go ahead and melt those. And then cocoa powder, just your standard baking powder. It doesn't need to be real fancy. And we'll use part of that in the dough to flavor, and then part of it to coat the date balls, and you'll see why. So I'll go ahead and take you through the process. I like to blend the almonds first in a food processor. And my food processor is not exactly the A team. It's sort of a B team food processor. It takes a while to blend things down so that they're smooth, but the goal here is to get the almonds ground as finely as possible because you want them to have a smooth texture. If you don't, then they're crunchy chunks in the date balls, which is fine. But if you're wanting to trick yourself into eating a truffle, which is my goal, then you would want to blend it as finely as possible. So I like to do that first. Then I go ahead and mix up the coffee. So it's really just a tablespoon of water with a big honkin' scoop of your instant coffee mix. You set that aside. And then you add the rest of the ingredients to the food processor. So I actually scoop the almond powder out, set it aside. In the same food processor, you don't have to wash it out. You would add your cherries, your dates, your cocoa powder, or whatever extra ingredients you're wanting to add in. But this is where you sort of start blending up your glue. And then, so there it is. It's not real pretty, but you just sort of want to mix that. You go ahead and add the coffee mixture to that so that it's got enough liquid. Otherwise, it'll just gum up around the blades. You want to add enough liquid there. And then you add the almonds. And adding this powder makes it into a very thick dough, but you want it to come together. You want it to blend evenly. And so if it's not doing that, if it's just getting too sticky around the blades, you would add just a little bit of water, 1 teaspoon at a time, to encourage everything to come together and bind. So it sort of ends up looking like this. Sort of just looks like dirt, but it is very tasty. So it may take 3 minutes of blending. So, if you have a spouse in the other room wanting to watch a TV show, tell them, do that later or put on earplugs or something. Okay, so you mix the ingredients, you unplug the blade or unplug the food processor and take out the blade so that you can scoop it out without the interference of the blade. So then this is the really messy part. Take off your wedding ring, put up your hair, roll up your sleeves. We're not messing around with this part. It is very, very, very sticky. Go ahead and have a wet paper towel nearby to just wash your hands because you will be scooping with a spoon and rolling the dough in your hands to make a ball. And it sort of ends up looking like that. And I go ahead and scoop all the balls out first, scoop it, roll it, set it on a plate. I like to put wax paper on the plate like this, like I have here. And as you can see, they're pretty sticky looking, and they might even start to droop a little bit. They don't necessarily hold their spherical shape 100% if the dough you've made is on the moist side. So that's why you coat it in cocoa powder. So you just sort of plop the cocoa or the date ball in a little cup of the cocoa powder so that it gets cocoa powder on one side. And then as you roll it in your hands, it will coat the whole surface evenly. You don't need to sit there and coat each side of the ball in the cocoa powder mixture itself because enough sticks to it when you drop it in on one side that you can roll it and it will evenly coat, which is pretty nifty. So when you roll it in the cocoa powder, get it coated, it helps it hold form better. So it gives this nice finished look, much more smooth. Obviously, when we first, when you start out with these, they're kind of spiky and still really sticky. But when you roll it in the cocoa powder, they get this nice rounded finished look. They look fancy. And so a lot of people will melt more chocolate chips to do a drizzle across the top. I didn't have time to do that. Um, but some people put a little flour or a little espresso bean or a cherry or something to, if you want to decorate it and have it for a party, you could make it really fun and presentable that way. So there you go. They are delicious. They are sort of healthy, and they are excellent to go breakfasts. Or if you're like me and about 2:30 every day, you start sort of eyeing the pantry, you start eyeing the fridge. They are pretty dense, and so one is a filling sweet treat, um, and they freeze forever. And so I actually, unless they're very, very, very dense and very hard, I keep them in the freezer and have them as a cold little to-go bite. So I recommend freezing them. You can put them in a closed Tupperware and just take them. So I make like 3 or 4 flavors at a time. I just dedicate, like, okay, we're just gonna have 3 hours of date balls here, and we just make a whole bunch, and they're fun as a gift because they're cute and impressive. And yes, so you can have the full recipe here on the blog, and go back through it at your leisure. So
There is a question from Deborah
okay.
in South Carolina. She was wondering if you could use almond flour instead of grinding the almonds yourself.
I have not really worked with almond flour before. So these don't cook. They don't bake at all. So I don't know. I've never used almond flour. I don't know its properties, and I don't know if it behaves like normal flour, which you would need to bake. I like the idea of having it ground already. That seems efficient and nice for, a time saver, but they don't bake at all. So I don't know if you would need that for the properties of the flour. If anyone who does bake wants to chime in, you could let me know.
And Jack wanted you to tell a little bit about the lemon date ball. Apparently that might be one of his favorites.
Yeah, the lemon date ball is the bee's knees. That one is really good. And instead of using almonds for that one, I used unsalted cashews because you can blend it even smoother. The cashews blend down really well. There are fewer chunky hard bits with cashews since it's just a softer nut and has a very neutral flavor. So I will grind like fresh ginger, real lemon juice, and I think that one may include even some coconut flakes. If you want to add in little coconut flakes just to give it a little something extra to hold it all together, that's a very lovely combination. Yeah, it's delicious.